on that.
I'll tell you what, Gauguin has done more for Tahiti possibly than anybody I could mention. Alpesh B.Patel is here, CEO of Profinium Partners. We'll come to Gauguin in a minute. Good morning, Alpesh.
Good morning. Morning.
If Le Figaro is right and it's the last chance, that's the worrying situation because every chance so far for peace in Ukraine has come and gone.
I think this is the worst possible thing the German and the French leaders could do. It's a classic negotiation tactic. This is the last chance, and if you don't negotiate with us, the Americans are going to be arming the Ukrainians. The Russians aren't going to fall for it. They'll call the bluff. They'll see it as a sign of weakness that the Germans and the French have come over there anyway. And the reason they'll call the Americans bluff and the Europeans bluff is because the Americans aren't even arming the other side in the Syrian conflict. So they're hardly about to do it on the doorstep of Europe. I think the Russians will see this as what it is, something that they can call the bluff on and stand firm. What actually needs to happen, what the Russians want, is the warm water port of Sebastopol so they can get access to their Black Sea fleet to that region. It's what they want. And what Europe should be asking instead for is saying, we're going to give that. We don't want to. We're going to give that. But in return, we want Ukraine in the EU, and we will encircle Russia. That's the price Russia pays.
Any follow-up on this, Alice?
Well, I mean, just looking at the financial side of all of this, internally inside Ukraine today, hugely worrying developments and drastic moves by the central bank.
Yep.
Do you think it's the right move?
You're absolutely right. Financially, it's really harming the Ukrainians, but it's contained. And because it's contained within Ukraine, it plays into the hands of the Russians because it's saying, look, you're the one suffering. Yes, Russia's suffering as well from the sanctions, but it's a big country compared to Ukraine. And it's not harming Europe. So the Ukrainians are the only ones really suffering from that. It's not going to affect and put any pressure on Europe in that regard. What will put pressure on Europe is just this threat of conflict on the border. So the Russians at the moment hold the cards, and what we need to extract from the European side is to say we want them in the EU and we will encircle you, Russia. That's the price.
The Financial Times, with the Merkel and Hollande story, but also with the same photograph on the front cover as the Wall Street Journal. And Varoufakis, the new Greek finance minister, he seems to be a man who's very confident in himself, but when you're dealing with Germany, clearly they hold all the cards. And Wolfgang Schäuble, I thought just that quote that he said, my spokesman is a professional diplomat, and I've been told that I have to say we agree to disagree. I thought that said it all.
You're exactly right. It's the negotiating strategy, again, just like we had in the previous story, and the Greeks don't hold any of the cards whatsoever. Now, be absolutely clear. The Greeks want time to repay, so they want time, and they want money. And the problem they've got at the moment is they've got nothing in return. You see, 5 years ago, they could at least say, we'll destabilise the European currency and we'll destabilise the EU. Now we've worked out, well, actually, Greece's about the size of Washington State in the US. It's puny. They can do neither. So all he's got to appeal on, and again, the Europeans aren't buying it, is the Greeks saying, look, deal with us, the party that's just won the election. Otherwise, the neo-Nazi party, which came third in the elections, Golden Dawn, will get a bigger footing. And quite frankly, the Europeans are looking at it as a financial problem. The Greeks are looking at it by appealing to the heart rather than the head, and that's the only card that they've got, and I don't think the Europeans are going to bite on it, sadly. He's absolutely right. The Greeks are a proud nation. They're an immensely important country in terms of historic reasons for Europe, but that isn't going to pay the bills, sadly. And so again, he's got a busted flush, so to speak. He hasn't got any cards.
Yeah, it's really difficult to see where the middle ground is on that one. Let's look at the front page of The Guardian now, because Twitter is actually our top story in business today, because in terms of their numbers, they're doing very well. But in terms of dealing with abuse and trolls, the chief executive says that they suck. He's acknowledged a failing, but he didn't really seem to sort of offer any solution, really.
That's what I was thinking. There was a lot of emails and internal memos saying I was really, really bad at coming down on the trolls, and at least they have, and they've probably seen what's happened to Facebook as well. Just a hell of a lot of negative PR if you don't do this, and it's a losing battle if you don't do it. And then he sent another memo saying, look, just to be absolutely clear, it was entirely my fault, because presumably executives within said, no, sir, it wasn't just you. But look, at least they're doing something about it now. And just to explain,
and using very plain language as well, which sort of helps to cut through some of the some of the PR surrounding these companies.
Absolutely. I mean, they've got to save face and reputation for a very simple reason. As you said earlier, it's the figures, the earnings. They've jumped up significantly because Twitter's just, over the last 12 months, started really pushing towards advertising on Twitter, and it's not taken off to the level it had in Google. And ad agencies would not want to be associated with a firm. So, again, be absolutely clear. I don't think the interest is with the poor victims of trolling. I think the idea is, look, we just floated. And isn't it funny that after they floated and became a public company answerable to public shareholders who want to see earnings increase, all of a sudden it's like, ooh, we better not annoy the ad agencies. And I think there's very commercial reasons to this, but at least it's had a good outcome.
Companies and Markets section of the Financial Times says London would like to mirror or emulate or even overtake the success of Silicon Valley, but there's also, is it Bangalore in India, where all those microchips and all that new technology is made? How can London compete with, first of all, India, where labour is, of course, cheaper than it is in the West, and Silicon Valley, which is already so well established?
Yeah, well, look, all this venture capital coming into the UK hasn't happened by magic. It's not people, as you rightly say, haven't just woken up and thought all of a sudden, why should we put the money here? There's huge government initiatives to close the gap in the market where we say we've got amazing companies in cybersecurity and clean technology, but we need to pull that money in. I work alongside the British government's UK Trade and Investments Venture Capital Unit. It's a unit which has been set up by the UK government to pull in money from abroad and say, look at the amazing companies we've got in Britain and the skills we've got and the ease of doing business. That's something where Bangalore can't compete. Very few countries in the world can compete with Britain's ease of doing business. So the entrepreneurs are brought here, but more importantly, the oxygen that they need, which is the capital, is brought in by the likes of them. I work in a unit called the Global Entrepreneur Programme. So we bring the entrepreneurs as well. And we say, look, the marriage between capital and entrepreneurs happens here in Britain. And it's been thanks to government efforts. And the great thing is the government doesn't actually have to spend, they don't have to spend much at all, but they just have to get the message out. And so it's a phenomenally great story, but it's the ease of doing business in Britain. That's the critical factor, as well as the amazing companies we have here. It's actually a great news story. And I'm afraid Bangalore and the likes can't compete. I'm out there next week, and I'm going to be pulling in more entrepreneurs over here.
Not a great news story. Front page of the Daily Telegraph. Potentially news that the flu jab could have been given to millions of people, and it's actually been useless because it's been affecting the wrong strain of flu this time.
There's going to be people who are going to die as a result of that. Somebody's got it wrong. The worrying story about this is twofold. Looking back, there'll be people who will have needlessly died because they didn't have the right vaccine, especially the elderly. And the other side of it is going forward, people are going to read this and think, well, what's the point of taking it in future? And that's the worst possible thing they could do. So there's two negative sides to this. If it happened in the States, you know, there's going to be billions in lawsuits for wrongful death and negligence and all the rest of it. It's in Britain, so all that'll happen is the NHS bill will have gone through the roof.
Right, the Gauguin painting, we haven't got time to discuss it, but apparently it's been bought by the Museums Authority of Qatar from a private collection in Switzerland. So hopefully now, well, you go to Qatar a lot, you may be able to see it. I love your morning energy, Alpesh. You're like a cup of verbal coffee. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks very much, Alpesh.